I gotta stop letting them talk me into things like this, man. It's insane. What the hell? Hawk? Is that you? That's really not funny, man. Oh, come up behind Jacob, snap a snick, freak him out. Stop letting them get in my head with things like this, man. Whatever. I gotta pee. Leave that right there. What? Oh. Wait, no.
Guys, I think we should look for Jacob. He's been gone a minute.
I wouldn't even worry about it, dude. He's probably fine, man. Like, he's probably just enjoying the quiet or something.
His ass got lost, bro.
Yeah, he does know the woods pretty well.
Yeah, he does.
I wouldn't suspect him to get lost.
Yeah.
You should probably go find him.
Someone.
You know, I can go do that. I can go find him. I'll go.
Are you sure?
Yeah. I know the woods pretty good. I can find him. I can
Be
find him.
careful, Hawk.
Safety, my heart.
All right, thank you. Man, I don't even know like where he is. He's not one to do something like this. Like, I know he knows he likes the woods and stuff, but he's not one to just run off. I mean, like, he's been gone for a while. Whoa! Hey, Jacob. Is that you, man? You doing okay, buddy? Why are we like... Whoa, hey, man. Are you good?
It's a cool summer night in the middle of June. You and 4 of your closest friends are in the middle of Acadia National Park on your annual camping trip. Every year since the 5 of you graduated high school, you've dedicated a week of summer to exploring and camping in one of the nation's parks. You've just finished collecting firewood so the 6 of you can cook up some s'mores. But as you make your way back to the campsite, you're overcome by the strangest feeling. It's as though you're being watched, studied, almost like someone staring daggers into the back of your head. You try to shake the feeling as you join the rest of your companions around the fire. Just as things are starting to feel normal again, one of your friends starts reminiscing on something that happened in the car during one of your previous trips. And that's when it hits you. You all came in the same car. That car only fits 5 people. There are only 5 tents around this fire. And yet there's 6 of you. The feeling of being watched creeps back up your spine as you count and recount and count again the bodies laid around the fire pit. This isn't right. Something isn't right. You've known these people for years, some of them your whole life. You're certain of that. But you can't ignore the fact that's now staring you right in the face. One of you doesn't belong, but you have no idea who.
I'm Hawk Tallman.
And I'm Jacob McKenna.
This is Under the Dirt.
And we are the Fossil Fellas. Hawk, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good.
Doing pretty good? Good,
I'm
good.
doing pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Now, you're after listening to that intro, you all at home are probably thinking, this is a little different than, the topics you Fossil Fellas have previously covered. And you'd be right in thinking that. This is very different from the Cerruti Mastodon site and Doggerland. Go check out those videos if you haven't already. But
Or even
or even
yeah, also
direwolves,
very
yeah.
different from like fresh dirt. Super different from fresh dirt.
Very different. And you're right in thinking that. But the reason we're covering this topic, the Fleshgait, a modern internet horror creation, is because this is anthropology. You may remember that we are an archaeology and anthropology podcast. I personally believe that storytelling is, or at least my favorite form of studying anthropology is via storytelling. Um, there's a quote somewhere that I don't remember who said it, but It essentially goes along the lines of what separates man from beast is that we are a storytelling species. It's one of the core aspects of the human experience, and I think there is no better way of studying us as people than through the stories we tell to scare ourselves. So, what we're going to be doing today is looking at a modern, scary story, but specifically one that has ties to ancient stories, specifically Native American mythology.
Yeah, so let's get into that. So myths over time, like, naturally evolve. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of the times when yeah, this creature, the Fleshgate, where exactly does it come from? It's like, what would you call it? Like origin myth?
Like the origin of it. Well,
Yeah,
it's very
like
unique.
origin myth.
This creature, this story, in that it originates from the internet. This wasn't like a myth that well, we'll get into its real or the myths it draws inspiration from and their origin a little later. But this wasn't
Mhm.
some campfire story that got adapted. This was created by uh, horror fiction writers on the internet.
Right, and I don't even feel like
Mhm.
it's not even like the same thing as the rake. You know what I'm saying? Like this is far more. We might talk about the rake more in depth later, but I'm just gonna go off the assumption that people know what the rake is. Um, just for like brevity of time, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Yeah. So the rake is far more. What am I trying to say here? The rake is far more intentional in its creation,
yeah.
whereas the Fleshgate evolved real naturally,
Oh, of course. We keep
right?
actually
Because like the Fleshgate,
go
because
ahead.
like if we get into it, the term Fleshgate comes about because of people calling things right, like they write their stories and they call things from the stories, like from the stories they're inspired by, they call this creature in them something that it's not. So a lot of stories were calling things Skinwalker, and a lot of things stories were calling things Wendigo that weren't really Wendigo or Skinwalker.
Yeah. We'll get into that more a little later, but why don't we actually dive into what the flesh gate is as a creature and as a storytelling device?
Okay.
We'll link in the description a wonderful uh short, well, not really short story, a wonderful story titled The Flesh Gate, and
About an
an
hour
accom
read.
yeah, and an accompanying reading of it by the Dark Somnium on YouTube. I highly recommend both the author, who will be credited in the description, and the channel which reads it. Um, but to make a long story short, literally, the Fleshgate is a creature which uh, has is very vaguely defined. It's how it is written and described varies from story to story, but there is a few through lines you will see in any of the narratives you'll read online. Uh, its most distinctive feature is that it will mimic both the voice of people you know and their appearance. So, as you
But
go ahead, Hawk.
yeah, but also like it can mimic people you know, but the other which you see in the story, but the other thing that is interesting about the Fleshgate is that the Fleshgate can mimic people you don't know.
Oh,
And
yes.
like the Fleshgate appears to be able to implant itself in your memories.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm
That
saying? Like the Fleshgate is able to make you remember things that never happened
yes,
and
that
like remember a person you never knew.
agreed. Yeah, that is what I was trying to convey.
I would call that even yeah, even apart from the mimicry, I would say no, I would say the mimicry probably is its biggest defining characteristic.
Yeah, because it
But there's that other part, the like
go ahead.
and sometimes I don't know if it's like related to the experience of the Fleshgate itself or if like Fleshgate has to spend more time mimicking you. Like if you remember in the story, we're gonna use the story as a kind of a standing point, like the Fleshgate, or at least I think we should, for like what the Fleshgate is able to do.
Yeah.
Because if you remember from the story, each subsequent encounter with the Fleshgate, it gets better at mimicking humans.
Yeah, this is true.
Like
And you did
the
hit on
first
a
time
good
they
point there.
encounter it, yeah,
Uh,
like the first time they encounter it, its jaw falls off and it runs away, and then the second time, um, it's kind of able to walk until they push it over.
mhm.
But then in the last time they encounter it, it's able to perfectly mimic a human until they smack it in the head and it starts spasming.
Yeah.
So
Um,
so, so it appears that a skinwalker, or not a skin, I'm sorry, fleshgates are able to a fleshgate can get more experienced at mimicking a person. It's a skill it has to learn.
yeah. And what I was gonna say is you actually you brought up what I is a secondary, what am I trying to say? Is also a main feature of it is memory alteration. Throughout, again, the story we're going to link in the description, and any story containing this creature which you will read, it as we've already stated, makes you think you've known a person who does not really exist. As Hawk just mentioned, it gets better at mimicking people over time. It will always perfectly mimic an appearance and a voice it has heard. It's the behavior that it struggles with, apparently. Like you said, it was struggling to mimic human walking, so it implanted a memory in the main character's mind that this individual he is witnessing has a muscular disability. Along the lines of cerebral palsy. I don't think that's exactly what it was, but it is able
Mhm,
to alter your perception of reality and your memory in order to fit in with the group it's implanting itself in.
mhm. Another interesting thing to go off of there is in the story, uh, and this can kind of lead into future episodes, especially when we start looking into the more right. Because if you remember, we also cover conspiracy, even though we haven't yet. Um, the Fleshgate is supposedly very, in some ways, closely linked to humans.
Yeah.
Um, because the author compares it to mad cow disease, as if the Fleshgate, because assuming that the Fleshgate is eating humans.
Hmm.
So the Fleshgate, he compares. So even though that kind of contradicts in the story, because it seems like the shambling was more due to it trying to get better at copying humans. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But he did mention in there that he compares it to mad cow disease. So the idea sometimes is that like Fleshgates might be some type of evolutionary relative to humans.
Yeah. Or that
You
they,
see that idea a lot.
yeah. Or alternatively, that they were human at one point, and, be it through some disease or some curse, they have become this creature which is
Mhm.
no longer human, but attempting to
Yeah.
be.
So um um and that's the other thing about the Fleshgate. The Fleshgate appears to hunt humans. It's not really explained why
Yeah. It
the
is,
Fleshgate hunts humans.
well,
Does it just kill humans for sport? Does it eat us?
yeah, its motives are, we've also been referring to the Fleshgate. Depending on the story, there are sometimes one or multiple. Um,
Mhm,
but regardless, a motive for this creature is never really given, other than it wants to mimic people and kill people. In some
mhm.
narratives, it will not actually kill the party it's ingrained in, and will just attempt to ingratiate itself within society somehow. Those narratives are less common, but nonetheless, they do still exist.
Makes you feel kind of bad for bro. He really just wants to fit in.
Yeah, that is it is interesting. That is an overlap it has with the Goat Man, which is another uh horror story monster. We may cover it another day, but the point of the or generally the Goatman is less malicious than the Fleshgate and simply wants to fit in, I suppose you could say.
Really, I always thought of the Goatman more as like the Goatman is just like it's an animal. It wants to live.
Yeah, well, there is the difference
Like,
between like you would say like the Appalachian and like the regional Goatman, the actual campfire story of it, and the internet creation. That's a topic
mhm.
for another day, but I just wanted to point it out.
Okay. So we went over what described like a Fleshgate. This is kind of interesting. So we know the history is kind of vague because we didn't look into it very much, right? Like we're not my PhD in like this isn't our PhD in anthropology. We didn't dig too deep.
Also, no
Um,
anthropologist with a PhD is looking into the Fleshgate. So it's
hey,
yeah,
if you want a PhD thesis in anthropology, like
it's an
this
untapped
is
market.
still this isn't not even untapped market. It's like genuinely an untapped. Like it is goofy internet stories, but this is genuinely like an untapped bit of culture to be like properly documented.
Yeah. With that is
Um,
another you mentioned proper documentation. That is another reason we didn't look all that much into it. Originating on the internet, most of these stories are a kind of poorly written. The famous ones are famous because they're actually written by people who know how to write. The rest are kind of just thrown together, not to dismiss them, but it's the truth.
like the one that you get when you look up Fleshgate
It's famous for a
creepypasta,
reason.
that one it's famous for a reason. It's famous because but it's not the earliest usage of the word Fleshgate. Like that author didn't come up with the word Fleshgate.
Yeah, even before the
Um,
term itself existed, there are stories written that you would, retroactively apply this term to.
right, but the problem is that these stories were calling this thing usually either Skinwalker or Wendigo.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, actually, we should transition to that, but just before we do that, one more thing on the documentation. Again, arising from internet horror stories, most of these authors are anonymous, and the websites they were posting these on are very, very difficult to navigate. Specifically, 4chan is where this term originates, and
Right.
I don't
Yeah, like the
don't use 4chan. It's
no,
not a good
yes, no,
website.
we're talking about it. We're talking about it. This is important.
Uh,
We're talking about it. And you better put it in the
I
description.
will. I will. Okay, the earliest
I'm gonna
source we
come
could find which uses this term is from uh 2014.
October 2014, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, so that's the earliest we could find. It's a really funny read. I recommend everyone goes and reads it. Like
I
what the
don't.
author calls it the
Wait,
the
Hawk,
author
Hawk,
is
Hawk, I don't think we can say that. I don't think we can say that on the podcast.
this is true. Okay, okay,
It's
okay. We want
very
to be monetized.
crudely written. We'll link
It's
it
very
for
crudely written.
the sake of it being an
The
important
author
source, but yeah.
the author calls the reader some some things that we can't say because we want to be monetized. But it's just weirdly written. It's written in like 4chan lingo.
Yeah. But okay, all that aside,
It's
it was
like
the earliest source we could find which uses the term. Um And if you
so it's
do
pretty
decide
important.
to purse your eyes by reading it, you will see why documenting this fictional creature is so difficult. Because this was the best, earliest source we could find, and it is of very poor quality.
Um,
All right,
so yeah,
all right.
so things were getting so the idea is that things were getting called Skinwalker and Wendigo, as you can see in the source where it says Fleshgate, formerly Skinwalker, is that things were getting called Skinwalker and Wendigo that weren't.
Yeah,
Um, let's do brief synopsis. I'll do Skinwalker, you do Wendigo.
yeah. So,
Oh wait, hold on. I'll do Wendigo, you do Skinwalker. I know a bit more about the Wendigo.
all right. just both of these are, um, I don't want to say real creatures, but they are real parts of Native American belief and mythology. Um, and they
Mhm.
have a canon to them that ought to be respected when you are telling a story. And that is why this separate term came about. I'm sure you can figure it out. Skin, Walker, Flesh, Gate. The term itself was created to uh, make these fictional stories distinctive from the actual Native American canon.
Yeah, like a lot of the people I've spoken to immediately jumped and said, "Oh, so you're talking about like cultural appropriation of these myths?" Not at all. The term this is specifically about making sure that you aren't appropriating them.
Yeah, not even I wouldn't even say appropriating, but more so misrepresenting.
But misrepresenting, yeah, like it is like the Fleshgate is a good thing.
Its existence is a good thing, yes.
Its existence is a good thing. It's specifically designed so that right, like cultural misrepresentation doesn't happen. But you want to do Skinwalker just so people
Uh,
know what's going on?
yeah.
These
So,
guys might get their own video in the future.
oh yeah, they're definitely deserving of it. So the Skinwalker is originating from the Navajo people. Um, it is and I'm no expert, but from my understanding, it is a shaman or a otherwise uh, individual who has great power and uh, is evil. Is the most simple way I could describe it. So within Navajo belief, you have shamans. Uh, that might be not the correct term to use, but for simplicity's sake, you have shamans and you have magic men, and you have healers who are powerful men in good standing with the community and typically doing right by their people. The contrast to that is the skinwalker, who is someone who has um so the way it goes is in order to become this skinwalker, this powerful person with, great abilities, which I will get into in a little bit, you have to commit some evil, selfish act. Now what this act is differentiates from narrative to narrative, but it is typically along the lines of betraying someone who trusts you, killing a family member or an individual whom you are close to, or something of significant evil, right? So it's this great
Mhm.
act of selfishness and betrayal to gain power, is the gist of it. And what these powers are, you'll see that's kind of where the name derives from. The biggest one is the ability to not even necessarily take the shape of an animal, but to gain the abilities of one by wearing their pelts,
Mhm.
right? So say you have
Right.
a skinwalker, he puts on a shawl or a coat made of wolf pelt. He then gains the abilities of a wolf, be it heightened reflexes, impeccable sense of smell and hearing, etc., etc.
Like the interesting is that the Navajo word for skinwalker directly translates to that which goes on all fours.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, that which goes on all fours. Which awesome
Um,
name, by the
I'll
way.
say the word awesome name. So there is a bit of a taboo around saying skinwalker, specifically for Navajo. I don't think that this taboo extends to saying like the Englishification of it being skinwalker. Um, but you won't find like Navajo people readily discussing this or like saying the word for it in Navajo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The word
If
Hawk
you
is
guys
referring
want it,
to, or do you want to say it?
yeah, we'll say it once on this just to, be respectful of the taboo, but it's ye not alushi.
Yeah. Again, that
Like
meaning that
like if
which
you
goes on
notice
all
some
fours.
guys like People like Lore Lodge won't even say it, but that when he was doing that, that was less out of a respect for the taboo and more that he actually believed that a skinwalker was going to come get him if
Yeah,
he said it.
yeah. To my understanding, the
Absolutely.
taboo, there is. I mean, obviously, it depends on where
Oh,
you
wait, wait,
go.
real quick though. The guy I just mentioned, Aiden Mattis, absolutely go check him out
Yeah, Aiden Mattis of the
if you
Lore
have it.
Lodge channel. Him and Aiden
Peak.
Thornberry, they're a historian journalist combo. Fantastic channel.
It's peak. Does Aiden Mattis believed, right?
Some crazy things. Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I'm asking you, Jacob. You know more. Does he still believe them?
no, not so much. It
Not so
was
much.
really
He
funny what he
used
did.
to. He used
We're
to like.
but we're
Used
getting
to
off
like
track.
genuinely. We're getting off track.
Yeah, we'll talk about that on some other day. I did want to note that taboo around these terms, skinwalker and Wendigo. Um, Again, I'm not native, so I can't firsthand understand it. But my understanding of it is that it's the same taboo we would have around words like rapist or murderer.
Mhm.
Yes, there is some idea that if you say the word, you will draw their attention, but it is more so that this is just something that is evil, that is bad, and it's not really, you don't want to talk about it.
Mhm.
Just to give some more context to that. Anyways, um, yeah, and so the abilities of the Skinwalker, beyond just taking the abilities of an animal whose pelt they wear, you get a little bit more mysticism when you go further into it. Some of them can do a form of astral projection or spiritual projection. Some of them can, and this is where we get the tie-in to the Fleshgate, can alter one's mind in certain ways, be it like suggestion, like the power of suggestion, or hypnosis, or even memory alteration. Again, it depends on which of the stories you read. But those are just some of the abilities of the Skinwalker. And unless I'm
Mhm.
forgetting anything, I think that's a pretty apt description of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, generally, and we'll get more into like the actual anthropology behind the stories in a little bit, but generally it is an individual who has uh, gained power through greed and selfish acts. Is like
Yeah.
just to put it in one sentence.
Mhm. Um.
Mm.
Here, I can do Wendigo.
Yeah, go for it.
Um. A Wendigo comes from right. Like the idea of Wendigo comes from loads of different cultures. Right. Like you can't really pin a distinct culture on Wendigo. Like it'd be saying like European dragons just come from Britain or like just
Actually,
come from
sorry,
Germany.
Hawk, a minor correction there. I take full responsibility for that one. I told you that a little while ago. I was wrong when I said that.
Mhm.
The idea of the Wendigo
Oh.
comes from specifically from the Algonquian peoples of northeastern Canada and northeastern America. So like
Mhm.
Connecticut, Massachusetts, up into like uh, Ottawa and Newfoundland, I believe, are the provinces there.
Mhm.
My Canadian
Mhm.
geography isn't great, but like that area, I'll put a map up on screen, and a little bit around Central America, like Central United States is
Okay.
where it comes from. My bad.
Okay.
I lied to you earlier when I told you that. It's
Okay. Okay.
its origin is the Algonquian peoples.
Um. So Wendigo is a really interesting creature because it's not even necessarily a creature, and there's some really cool historical um instances of this where like technically if you want to go off of like Wendigo are what like native people call Wendigo, then there have been real Wendigos,
Yeah,
right? The I have to mention it. The Wendigo execution. Um,
there have
I
been
don't
several, but
remember
I know
all
the
the
one you're
details.
talking about.
Yeah, the one I'm talking about. There have been like an instance happened. I don't remember exactly, and this is a fault on mine. We'll put the source in the description, and you can go read it. Go read it. It's crazy. Um, there was the Wendigo execution where a guy traveling in this area, like a European man, right, traveling in this area and living with a group of Algonquin, witnessed them like find a man, try him for being a Wendigo, and he's found guilty. Right? Like they look at what happened and they say, "Yeah, this makes you a Wendigo." And you might be saying, "Hawk, what makes you a Wendigo?" And that's cannibalism. The idea is that if you eat another person, either something about you changes or you've let a spirit in. There's those two understandings of it, that either something fundamentally about you changes, or the act of you consuming another person has given this evil spirit the ability to possess you.
Yeah. Or
Um,
alternatively, there's like a little caveat to that, is that the evil spirit of the Wendigo possessed you prior and made you commit that act.
right.
Point
But the
being,
point about this is
yeah,
that the
go.
point being is that um point being is that it's heavily related to cannibalism and starvation. Uh Shoot, I wish I had it pulled up. The Wendigo description from the spiritual world of the Algonquin. Do you know what book I'm talking about?
I believe I do, but I wouldn't have it on hand.
Okay. And we can save this for future videos, where we go more in depth on these things. But that's the Wendigo. You become a gaunt figure that's said to be very strong, very fast, and the Wendigo has a constant craving for human flesh.
Yeah. Actually, let's
The Wendigo,
go ahead.
yeah, the Wendigo is heavily tied in its roots of like starvation, and uh, the Wendigo is constantly hungry.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
I
saying?
wanted to go a little bit more into the distinction between an individual who has been deemed a Wendigo and the tales of the Wendigo. So, as Hawk said,
Yeah.
anyone who
So,
commits the mortal sin of cannibalizing another person is a Wendigo.
and for the Algonquin, this was very much a mortal sin. Like there was no going back.
Yeah.
It
You
was
would
like, yeah,
be killed on sight.
you you would be, and as in like the, oh man, well we can read it later, but in the Wendigo execution, this wasn't like oh, they held a trial. It's like, oh, they found this out and then they beat him to death with hatchets.
It was I believe I
Right?
remember
Like
the
there was
story. It was the
zero.
man who came back from a hunting trip and, I'm forgetting the exact details, but he made a comment on, "Oh, those, children are looking mighty fat," right? And amongst other suspicious things he had said, they're like, "Alright, this guy's weird. We're gonna go check out the story," he said, 'cause he came in from a hunting trip, alone and, uh, unsuccessful in his hunt. So they go back to his supposed camp, and they find, evidence of well, they find the remains of, his family, whom he had killed and eaten, right? Is that the story you're referencing?
Yeah.
Anyways, when they find that campsite, they just kill him on site. They're like, "You ate your family. You are a Wendigo. You are to be killed now." And yeah, they just kill him with
Right. So
hatchets.
that's that's the interesting part of it, where it's like, if you want to go off of that, it's really interesting that it kind of transcends the level of like story.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Where like an action happened and they're like, "No, you are a Wendigo.
Yep.
Like you meet all the criteria for it.
Yeah,
We're
it
gonna
was a
kill you."
very real cultural thing. What I wanted to go a little bit more into is the mythical stories of the Wendigo. Essentially,
Right.
this was like the stories you would tell your kids or younger members of the tribe,
And
before bed, just to be
and
like,
those are more of,
what?
yeah, yeah, those mythical ones are more of the, oh my, what's that video game that has the Wendigo in it?
Oh, I don't know.
You know the one I'm talking about?
I really don't.
Oh my god, let me look this up.
Anyways, the point being, these were tales that were told to instill these cultural values in the youth of the tribe. Um,
Until Dawn.
Until Dawn. Yes, Until Dawn
Yeah, the
is
game is
a
Until
very
Dawn.
good
Look up
modern
Until Dawn.
representation. I'll
That
throw
is the more mythical Wendigo as opposed to like the cultural one.
Yeah, I'll throw up
With
a few
like the
images on
gaunt,
screen of the Until Dawn
animalistic.
representation.
Yeah, there's a lot of modern representations are turning the Wendigo into something it's not. A lot of them are starting to associate it with deer for whatever reason.
Oh yeah, if you've seen any image of the Wendigo, or in like Western media, it may have deer antlers or deer-like
May
features.
have
This
like a
is
deer
simply untrue.
skull. Yeah, like look up the Until Dawn. That is a very good modern representation of the Wendigo. I wonder if something's gonna happen like with what happened with the Fleshgait, like with this new creature that's being made.
Well, I think from what I've read, it's still the
That
Wendigo. They're just changing the physical attributes. What it
Mhm.
actually does stays the same. But anyways, getting into those stories, um, there is after one commits the act of cannibalism, there is a physical transformation which takes place, in which you essentially become the embodiment of hunger, right? As Hawk briefly mentioned, you over time, actually not even over time, rather quickly become very gaunt, emaciated. Typically, they're described as growing to be larger than the average man, very very large actually, um, with superhuman abilities. You know, incredible strength, incredible speed. They are essentially apex hunters of man. Um, Again, as Hawk mentioned, you are cursed with this insatiable hunger. Hence why they're always gaunt and look like they've been starving. Um, so again, this is the story Wendigo. To an extent, they are animalistic, but depending on the narrative, some of them are still somewhat sentient. There's one rather famous narrative where a Wendigo kidnaps a native boy in order to fatten him up, in order to eat him. So, he feeds him, and every day he cuts a bit of his hand to check if there's a level of fat growing. Eventually,
Mhm.
the Wendigo sends the boy into, town, I guess you would say, in order to get supplies. And he says, "Don't tell anyone because they'll come and get me." But obviously, the boy tells people, and they come and they attack the Wendigo, and they cut his legs off. And they're like, "Oh, surely this has killed him." They come back a few days later to find the Wendigo eating the bone marrow out of its own cut off legs.
Whoa.
Really just hammering home that idea of it is hungry beyond humanity.
Mhm. And that's an example of more like the mythical
Yeah.
Wendigo as
There
opposed to the
are also
cultural one.
some examples where it grows with every time it eats a person to the point of like being taller
Mhm.
than trees, but that's less common.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's more stuff for like an in-depth Wendigo video.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that covers I think that covers really well the origin of the Fleshgate. And the point is that as you can see, those two creatures are not what is being commonly described in these creepypastas.
Yeah. Um,
Um,
just again,
but the
people were
stories,
were writing stories with what we now call the Fleshgate, but they were calling it either the Wendigo or the Skinwalker, which is simply not accurate to the canon.
Mhm. So yeah, I think it's a really cool example of modern anthropology and showing the modern evolution of myth.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because these stories were probably inspired by reading stories about skinwalkers and wendigos and people putting their own twists on it, but keeping the name.
Oh, so I mean, yeah, you don't just come up with these terms. They had to have read these stories prior to writing their own.
Right. And yeah, it's just same thing with the. Yeah, I know we just criticized it, but same thing with the deer-like features getting put onto the Wendigo. I'd like to look into where that came from
Yeah, that would be interesting. Actually, yeah, I think
because,
this
like,
is a
I'm
great.
looking it up right now.
Go
If
ahead.
you look up Wendigo, like every depiction of it has the deer-like features.
Yeah. That is
I
interesting.
I want to know where that came from.
This is a great
But that's for
segue.
more.
Go ahead.
That's for more of a Wendigo focus video
Yeah.
though.
Well, I mean, we can talk about it now. I was going to say this is a great segue into we're just going to have a free form discussion about the anthropological aspects of these stories now, I think. Um so yeah, that deer antler aspect of it and the deer-like features. Um that is it gives a really interesting insight into the people who would have been telling these stories, these modern stories, and adding these things on because I imagine these modern additions would have come from people who would have grown up in the areas where these native legends are originating from. Again, being northeastern America and Canada. So people who are
Mhm.
maybe hunters or just grew up in and around the woods, who would be very familiar with deer and very familiar with the fact that deer can be kind of weird and creepy at times. Like,
Oh yeah, we can talk about this. This is more like modern. There's the not deer. That's more like internet. There's actually a lot of like internet horror mythology.
oh yeah, it's great. That'll be its own. Like, there are dozens of
Like we
hours of
could make an
content you could make
entire
about that.
video. Right, yeah, like there's not deer, there's is like yeah, as anyone knows, deer are just like kind of creepy at night. And you
Yeah,
see deer and this goes into more of, you know, just this, I don't know what you call it, but like myth family, maybe. That'd
modern
be a good term for
mythology.
that, but like no, like myths that are all related to one another.
Okay, yeah.
Right, like the Wachuga would be included in here. We won't talk about the Wachuga here. But like the Wachuga would be in here, the not deer would be in here. These shapeshifter, human-esque
Creatures.
mimics.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, moving past the deer focus. Um, let's look at the anthropological aspects we touched on them briefly, but of the skinwalker and the Wendigo. Um, like we said, these were partially, actual beliefs, but also partially meant to they were stories meant to instill values in people, right? As is
mhm,
all mythology to an extent, right? Um,
yeah.
or mythology or religion, you can throw those two together
Mhm.
sometimes. But like say, so the Skinwalker is warning against greed and selfishness, or selfish acts for personal gain.
Oh
Because
yeah,
like the Skinwalkers were not held in
more on
high
this.
regard.
Yeah, no, you're an outcast.
Yeah,
Right? Like as we can tell from the cultural skinwalker, the cultural skinwalker, you're killed they kill you.
Wendigos, you're saying.
Um Wendigo, yeah. Um they kill you. There's a really good chapter about this in a book by Robin Wall Kimmer.
Hmm.
We'll link that in the description. Robin Wall Kimmer, she's Potawatomi. But she writes about this and she writes about the Wendigo as a manifestation of greed,
Hmm.
of human greed. Um yeah, but that is also like a really interesting take of the Skinwalker.
Yeah, and like it's so these themes that you see within Skinwalker stories become even more apparent when you contrast them with like tales of barbarians from like northern mythology, where or sorry, not barbarians, like what's the word I'm looking for?
Berserker?
Berserker. Yes, thank you. This is my own people's mythology. I should know this. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, nah, you're a LARPer, bro.
All right, all right. But anyway, so you would see
Guys,
berserkers.
FYI, for future reference, Jacob is a Viking LARPer.
Ah, all right, all right. We'll talk about that later. We'll talk about that later. Can't even have pride in your people's history.
No.
Um, but yeah, so berserkers of northern mythology were people who they had similar powers to skinwalkers, in that they would gain like the abilities and the strengths of animals during combat. The difference is that they would take on these abilities for the sake of their clan, their tribe, so that they could, you know, either go raid and pillage and bring home great wealth, or fend off an attacker. With the Skinwalker, it's purely selfish. You do that for you
Well,
yourself and no one else.
but to my understanding, weren't berserkers also to some level social outcasts?
Maybe I haven't actually. I know less about that. But I do understand they were not so outcast as Skinwalkers.
Yeah,
I'll
like
have to
you're
look
not.
into it more.
It's not like Wendigo where like you're killed on sight. It's more like medieval executioner.
I
Like
see. I see.
medieval executioners like lived outside city walls and stuff.
Yeah.
There's even instances oh, I don't remember the sources on this, but there's instances of a guy getting out of execution by saying he'll become an executioner,
Interesting.
right?
But
Because
anyway, the point
it's such
being,
a
the point I
stigmatized.
was making is that it's not for yourself. It is for the sake of those around you, compared to the Skinwalker being purely selfish.
True.
But yeah, you see that as a tale instilling cultural values. With the
Mm,
Wendigo, again, its geographical origin yeah, actually plays a part, because it's very the tales are full of the themes of hunger, of starvation, and of being cold all the time. Um, again, these are tales coming from Canada and New England. If you're from Canada or New England,
okay.
it gets cold. It's always cold outside of the summer. Even more so, uh, hundreds or thousands of years ago, when these stories developed. And
Mm,
when you're a hunter-gatherer society, and you're really or somewhat hunter-gatherer society, and you're reliant on hunting and gathering, the winter really sucks. There's no food.
yeah.
You're hungry and you're
Uh,
cold, and you see these themes weave their way into the Wendigo, because, again, as we mentioned, there was the cultural and the story. It was very real that people would resort to cannibalism, just to not die. But obviously, the culture around them said, You can't do that. That's a mortal sin." Um, so we see with the Wendigo, it is both instilling cultural values, but also it is a tale um, created by its surroundings.
mm, yeah.
That, I think, covering those two, I think that brings us to the Fleshgate. So,
Yeah,
uh,
we went pretty in depth on Wendigo.
yeah, we did. Sorry, I nerded out a little bit there.
It was pretty. Oh, nerded out a little bit. We'll have a better. We'll say like I don't know in the Wendigo episode we'll say basically the same thing, but
Yeah,
more in depth and with our sources straight.
yeah. Not just
But
us
yeah, the
yapping.
flesh. Well, I mean, it's a podcast. These aren't scripted videos.
Yeah, that's true.
Um, but yeah, Wendigo or the Fleshgate's kind of interesting because it's like
It was
it
created
doesn't
to be scary.
necessarily. It was created to be scary. It doesn't necessarily carry a moral to it, and I think a lot of the times, a lot of stories also didn't carry necessarily morals to them. Even though like some of them definitely did. You know what I'm saying? But like ones like the boy who got kidnapped by the Wendigo, those ones were definitely just told as fun stories.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But it was still propping up the
Like
idea
not
of, like,
everything.
the Wendigo is a real thing and you should kill it.
Yeah. Right, like someone can be a Wendigo.
Yeah, whereas with the Fleshgate, outside of a very, very small number of stories, no one believes it to be real, because it's not.
Except for Aiden Mattis.
We can't keep slandering the man like this.
Okay. Aiden Mattis for a time believed Fleshgates were real. He talks about
No, he believes
And
in
this can
flesh
lead in.
pedestrians. They're different.
Hey, it's me, John Pedestrian, the Fleshgate.
We need to get John
Guys,
Pedestrian on here.
we need to we need to do we can get John Pedestrian as a guest star.
Yeah. Um. Okay, so the Fleshgate being a collection of stories created to be scary, um, we as anthropologists should look at it uh, in a, as a way to understand human fear and what we can
Mhm.
then extrapolate from our fears as a society, and we can extrapolate from that what we hold dear to ourselves.
Yeah, I've noticed this in a lot of internet horror, especially recently. The idea of mimics seems very prevalent right now.
Oh yeah,
Things
Five Nights
like
at
the
Freddy's
Mandela.
biggest indie horror franchise currently. Its main antagonist is the Mimic. So,
Right, there's things like the Mandela catalog,
oh yeah.
and I don't know Okay, as good as the Mandela catalog was, hot take, it did kind of ruin analog horror for a bit
I mean, I don't know if I would say ruin. It's
because
just that people tried to copy it and failed.
right, and for a while, all the new analog horror stuff was just town is attacked by mimics that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just the nature of when
Yeah, but
anything gets popular.
yeah, that's true. Totally though, go check out the Mandela catalog. If you take anything away from this video, it's go watch the Mandela catalog and go watch the Lore Lodge.
Yeah. Um.
Speak. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, mimics are super prevalent right now in horror. I'm not sure why though.
Well,
I'm
let's.
not
I
sure
mean,
why
let's
necessarily
let's get
are.
into that. So, as I mentioned, when we're looking at human behavior, it's very important to look at our fears because a- as any psychologist or two-bit therapist will tell you, you need to talk about your fears because they can reveal the deep truth hidden within you. And as much as I will write them off, they have a point. Um, so with these stories, they took bits and pieces of these real mythologies, took what they found to be scariest, and put them into this one thing. So what I guess we should answer, what fears does the Skinwalker, or sorry, the Fleshgate, I'm just like the horror writers mixing the two up. What fears does the Fleshgate instill in people?
Mhm.
I think,
It definitely instills like a fear of like not being able to trust those around you.
oh, for certain, not being able to trust your own perception.
Yeah, not being able to trust your own perception, which we could even go now into like that even leads into like AI.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
The world
people are
around
super scared.
you and the things you're seeing not being as they seem. I
Right?
think
Can
I
I
think we'll all agree
trust?
that that's a scary thought.
Right, and that's been a scary thought for like that's not even just a recent phenomenon. Like even like what's his face? Rene Descartes talks about this, about the fear of not being able to trust your perception of reality.
Does he know?
You know what I'm saying? Ancient French philosophers be yapping about this stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. The Fleshgate does reveal that human fear of the uncanny, the fear of the almost human.
This is very real.
Right, I think the Fleshgate is inspired a lot on that. Um, what do you think that's from? Do you think I've always, to my understanding, the idea is like we have that fear of the almost human because of other species of hominin.
I thought that too for a while, but apparently it's been debunked as there's some evidence that the reason there's evidence that Homo sapiens and other hominids like Neanderthals specifically cohabitated for the most part.
Hmm.
And simply it was just natural selection that we remain
Right, I've seen that one thing where
rather
it's
than the
like
idea that
Neanderthal.
we had some war and we're the victors.
Yeah, but like, okay, we can go more into that.
Yeah.
I don't know much about that. Crazy lore though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I feel like we've talked quite a bit.
Well,
Video's
I
getting
mean,
kind of
hold on.
long.
There's more to say. Uh, we have to keep yapping, Hawk. You don't get it.
We don't. We've been yapping. I've been yapping. Okay, me and McKenna yapped for like an hour and a half before we even started recording.
Yeah.
Bro, if you need anyone to yap, call up me or McKenna.
We will just talk about everything. But okay, what I did want to get at is there was one more fear. It's a fear of betrayal, I think, is
Mhm.
in these because it is a false betrayal because you never knew these people, and they've been planted in your mind, but
Mhm.
it is still that feeling. At the end of the story, we're using as our baseline. The main character still has all the memories that were implanted in his head, and he still thinks about them and still feels guilty about them. So that fear of having trust when you shouldn't and being betrayed
Mhm.
by someone close to you or who you thought was close to you, I think that obviously hits home to a lot of people. And I think it's so prevalent now, in like you said, in mimics, in modern horror, in the Fleshgate, because of the rise of the internet. I think I've been kicking around this idea in my head that with the rise of social media and online society, I guess you could call it, and specifically online relationships, be it friend or otherwise, there is this underlying fear, that the people you know aren't who they say they are. They aren't what they appear to be. Anyone who, you've again, I wrote this theme into the intro for the episode. People you've known for possibly years, your whole life, could one day just, and at the drop of a hat, uh, reveal themselves or be revealed to be, uh, something horrible, or just a completely different person. Be that,
Yep.
catfishing online or just entirely fabricated personas that you know, think you know. And I think, maybe not to an older audience or an older generations, but our generation at least can somewhat relate to this. Um, Again, online friendships are becoming very, very common. And so I think that's why we're seeing this fear, be pushed up to the front of horror today.
Mhm.
Or maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Kind of cooked. We'll make that a master thesis in the my PhD thesis in the Fleshgate.
Yeah.
In my PhD thesis as of the Fleshgate, I have no Know Your Shapeshifters Volume 1 cited.
I really hope there's not a volume 2 of that. Oh my god.
No, if you look at it, it says Volume 1 in the top right corner.
Oh no. Ugh. Do we have to go find those now? I think we have to find those now.
No, we're not looking for the no.
All right. All right.
No, maybe if this was actually our PhD, like anthropology PhD thesis, but it's not.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, just to recap, um as a well, we didn't even get into what, I mean, we kind of did, but like I was going to say we could extrapolate our like cultural values through our fears, but that's a little bit that's a little bit above us, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
I mean, I guess you
But
could
yeah,
you
that's the
you could
that's
broadly say
okay.
we value trust and honesty, and
We
that
do.
being betrayed is something we're deeply afraid of.
Mhm. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that about does it.
Yeah. That's the Fleshgate.
Yeah,
The Freak Gate.
it's I guarantee you somebody has written a story that would qualify as the freak gate.
Oh no. Oh
That's
That's the real horror story. Oh my god, he cut out.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. I've been I'm
That's
gonna keep this in. I've been having like tech issues for like the past week. So if anything is a little like choppy this episode, that's on me. My computer keeps randomly freezing every 20 to 30 minutes. I'll fix it the best I can in post.
Do you think John Pedestrian is the no? John Pedestrian wouldn't be the free gate. Oh my god, he cut out again.
Yeah. My PC is trying to tell me to kill it.
Leave that in. Leave those last two cutouts in.
No. I'm gonna like cut it to
Leave
like
them in.
technical issues or something. But
John
yeah,
Pedestrian would
that about does it for the Fleshgate, and a little bit on the Wendigo and the Skinwalker.
expect full blown. If you got same things as always though. Subscribe to the Instagram. Not subscribe. I'm tired, man. Follow the Instagram. Like, comment, subscribe. If you got any ideas for future topics that you would want to hear about, drop them in the comments. We'd be happy to do a fan request.
Yeah, and if you're like an enthusiast of modern horror or modern internet horror, we'd love to hear your take on this. You probably are aware of the Fleshgate in some way. We're on Spotify now too.
We're on Spotify.
Yeah, finally, after like 3 months. I
Oh,
think
one caveat though. Spotify videos go up a week after YouTube videos go up.
yeah, just while we're, establishing the channel. Spotify releases are gonna be a little delayed. That's what I was gonna mention, but
To
we
be honest
are on
about it, this
Spotify
is
now.
literally just to
Go
make people
follow Under the Dirt on Spotify.
go do that. Watch us there if you want.
Or what? Yeah. Or
Yeah.
we like I keep. I'm the one doing all the editing, by the way. So every time I say or Hawk says we're gonna throw up a visual, he's telling me to throw up a visual. So visuals will be mostly on
Oh,
YouTube.
that I didn't say throw up a visual once.
I know, but you have. Anyways, yeah, that about does it. Thank you
That
for
about does it.
watching.
We'll catch you next time.